This is the Paul McGuire Report. I'm Paul McGuire. On today's program, I want to talk about how to heighten your perception when you're looking at the mainstream media, such as television, radio, the internet, social media, print media, blog sites, etc. And that's really only the tip of the iceberg, because electronic media is ever expanding. You have an ever-expanding universe of distribution of programs, like, for example, Netflix. But Netflix is old, so now you have Hulu and all these channels. Here at Paul McGuire Ministries and Paradise Mountain Church, we use the Roku Channel. The Roku Channel is free and very popular. You can watch all of the Paradise Mountain meetings where I've taught on Bible prophecy, about 175 hours of intensive teaching, free. You can watch hours of it absolutely free. We don't charge anything, by going to our Roku channel. And again, Roku is free. You simply go to paulmcguire.us, paulmcguire.us. Now, all of the new, laptops and TVs and stuff, they already have a Roku channel built in. If you have an older one, you can buy a Roku device off of Amazon or something for like $30 or something. It's very simple to add, and any teenager can help you do it in like 3 seconds. And not only can you watch our channel, there's lots of interesting channels, especially from Christians on the Roku channel. So in this ever-expanding universe of media, the key is that whatever media you're watching, viewing, listening, or participating in, you don't allow yourself to be manipulated. You don't allow yourself to be controlled. You're conscious. If you interact with the media and you don't consciously make the decision to put your filters up, in other words, if you think television news is your friend, you're a fool. If you think this media outfit or that media outfit is your friend, you're being very foolish. You need to have your guard up, and you need to use discernment, both spiritual discernment and psychological discernment. And when something is being promoted to you in the guise of giving you news, under the guise or under the disguise of giving you news, you're being fed propaganda, indoctrination, mind control. When I first started using those words, those were considered kind of out there words. For most people in America, I would say they're still out there words. But I was in the car a couple of hours before entering the studio, listening to somebody on the internet who's a financial expert. The guy is the author of a couple of very best-selling books on acquiring wealth and stuff like that. But he does it from a totally unorthodox approach. But he delivers results for the average person. And he used these terms over and over again. And he wouldn't have used these terms 3 or 4 years ago. It would have been too far ahead of the curve. I was using the words because that's the subject matter that I deal with. But he was talking about the fact of being hypnotized by teachers in the educational system, by his poor father. Now, this is going to give away the author to some of you, because he's a best-selling author. But I guess this particular author was raised by a poor father who meant well, who was a teacher, and he was also raised, I guess, in part by a rich father and a wealthy father. And so he wrote a couple of best-selling books contrasting the advice that he got from his educated but poor father with the advice that he got from his rich father. And he was throwing out some terms, but what he kept saying, as I was listening to him today, he kept saying when he went to school that they were subjecting him to hypnosis and mind control. In other words, brainwashing young people who don't know anything about money to think of money like most poor people do. And by poor, I mean working class, middle class, etc. And this famous author was saying that they teach their children to get a good education, to work hard, and to get out of debt. And that's probably how you were raised. Maybe you weren't. I was raised that way. But the author made the point of saying this, that his wealthy father never, ever, ever used that kind of terminology. And that really wealthy people never use that kind of terminology at all. They don't think in those terms. They don't think in terms of, quote, just getting out of debt. They use debt to finance making more money, to finance projects. Now, I want to give a disclaimer here. I'm not pretending to be a financial planner on this program. So I'm not even going into that area. That's a specific discipline. I've worked with financial planners. I've sought the advice of financial planners, but I'm certainly not pretending to be a financial planner. But I'll tell you this, in all my meetings with financial planners, I've met very, very few good ones. Most of them didn't know what they were talking about. And what this guy was saying, and he's very well known, was that the basic advice, well, the first thing he pointed out was that in education in America, you learn nothing about money. And that's true. You don't really learn about making money, acquiring money, preserving money, et cetera, et cetera. It's conspicuous by its absence. I always thought it was. In addition, you learn nothing about marriage, or at least productive in marriage, in the educational system either. People get more training to have a driver's license than they do on marriage. I'm not talking about the physical act of marriage. Please don't accuse me of being vulgar. But I want to make a point. So I'm going to risk being vulgar, but what I'm saying is not going to be insensitive if you have young children in the room. It's not going to be anything that would be offensive to them. But if you want to be safe, you can turn it off. The program, just turn down the volume for like a minute. I'm never vulgar, so I don't intend to start now. But I do want to drive the point home. So on the count of 3, I'm going to make my comment, and it won't last more than a minute, and then you can turn up the volume if you want. So 1, 2, 3. Okay. So they don't teach you anything about marriage in the educational system, which they should. And I'm not talking about the physical act of marriage, and this is the blunt part. Any idiot, any moron, any baboon, anybody can complete the physical act of marriage. Okay, it doesn't take a great deal of education to complete the physical act of marriage. So that's not what I'm talking about. Now, obviously, in accordance, and now I'm going back into totally, let's just call it G-rated. I don't like this G-rated programming. You see, G-rated, it assumes that it's like the Disney program. And I think a lot of stuff in Disney programs are offensive. So I don't like the G-rated. But this topic we're doing now is I think is acceptable for kids to be in the room. So the point is that there are things that go along with the physical part that have to do with realities such as the possibility of getting pregnant, how to prevent getting pregnant, abortion, all these other things. I'm not saying that those things shouldn't be taught, but I'm not sure that they should be taught by a secular system that has a hidden agenda to destroy or eradicate Christianity and is militantly pro, I don't like the word choice, pro-death. I don't really think that they should be educating our kids in this area. But let's be real. There are a lot of parents out there who give their children, their kids, even when it's age appropriate, zero education in the area of being responsible, et cetera, how to prevent pregnancy, et cetera, et cetera. They give them zero education. And that's a disturbingly high percentage. All right. So the point is, when I talk about you don't get any education on marriage, you don't get any education on like how to stay committed in a marriage, how to solve problems with communication in marriage, the seasons of a marriage, because our society doesn't even emphasize this anymore. Even when it did, it didn't give any teaching. So marriage is very important. And I'm not just talking about biblical marriage. No matter what your perspective, secular, alternative, traditional, or whatever, there are basic principles in marriage that have to do with love. I'm not talking about the physical act of love. Like I said, anybody can do that. I'm talking about agape spiritual love, where you love the other person more than you love yourself. And that's the glue that makes marriages work. But people receive no teaching on that. And so is it any wonder the divorce rate is skyrocketed? Is it any wonder that even in Christian circles, evangelical Christian circles, all the data, all the statistics in evangelical Christian, among evangelical Christian teenagers and young adults and adults, whenever they do a poll, the behavior, the thinking, the beliefs, the actions of the Christian culture, of the average Christian man and Christian woman, are usually exactly the same when they poll them as the average non-believing man and woman. So the average non-believing man and woman thinks, acts, and behaves in their regular lives just like the so-called evangelical Christian does. There is no measurable difference between the two groups, despite the fact that one group claims to be believing in Jesus Christ and the Word of God and the other doesn't, but there's no measurable difference in terms of behavior, attitudes, belief systems. So, is it any wonder that, and this is, I'm not saying this for the purpose of putting anybody down or being judgmental. If you have been married more than once, which probably would be the majority of the people listening to this program, or if you've been married twice or whatever it is, I'm not here to put you down even remotely or to be even remotely condescending. So I want you to understand that. I've been married to one person, one wife for over 44 years. Not because I'm such a spiritual, holy, and wonderful guy. And in deference to my dear wife, Chris. Not because she is a wonderful woman of God, but not because she's, a saint. We're not married 4 decades plus because we were saints. It was the grace of God, unmerited favor. You've heard my testimony. So there's no bragging there. So I don't look down on people who've been married more than once or whatever. This is a difficult world. I tell that to people all the time. So, but one would think that some basic training in communication, I'm not sure that can be done by a system that has a hidden secular agenda, but assuming it could be, basic training in communication, solving marital problems, and not just physical marital problems, money problems, communication problems. Giving, if you gave people just as much information as you gave them to pass that they need to know in order to pass their driver's license test to drive a car, that would be something. But people are thrown out there with little or no education on how to be married. And many people like myself and maybe yourself, I came from a divorced home. So I didn't see any modeling of proper behavior. I didn't see my father model a healthy father and husband. And I didn't see my mother model a healthy wife and mother. Not that they were horrible people. They weren't horrible people, but they certainly didn't have it down by any means. As I've told you before, my parents used to fight like cats and dogs. They both had their master's degree. So education has nothing to do with success or failure in marriage. And they would argue, they would yell and scream. And my mother, I remember sitting in the kitchen, and my mother would hurl white dishes. I mean, she would fling them like frisbees at my father, and all I would hear was the explosion of the whatever the material the dish is made out of, ceramic or whatever it's made out of, the ceramic dish shattering against the wall as she would issue forth a bunch of profanities towards my father. Now I laugh. I don't know if you had that wild of an upbringing or worse, but I look back and laugh. Thank God I can laugh. But there was no role model on how to communicate. So we throw children and young adults into a world with the odds against them. We actually set them up for failure because they don't even have the basics in communicating, solving problems, et cetera, et cetera. Now, back to money. What this guy was saying, this best-selling author, I added the marriage part. There's no teaching in schools about marriage. There is now, and I'm going to bring this up. You've heard me bring it up before. I'm so disturbed about it. I'm so alarmed about it that I have to continually bring it up. If you're not aware of the fact that, yes, your child has been going through sex education curriculum in all public schools, and I think many private schools, in order to receive certain funds, have to teach their children sex education. Now, we're not talking about the birds and the bees. We're not talking about physical anatomy 101. Now, this part here, I'm going to give you a heads up. I'm going to probably talk 2 or 3 minutes in the most graceful, polite, dignified way I can. But I have to communicate the nature of the curriculum that is being taught or is going to be taught, or your child is currently being taught it now. I have to describe as delicately as I can the curriculum, because if I don't, my warning will be absolutely meaningless. So in the count of 3, I'll probably talk for about 3 minutes on this. I'll be very delicate, but unless I outline the nature of what your child or young adult is going to be exposed to beginning at 5 years old, all right, and by 9 years old, anything goes. Not only does anything go, it's all considered the new normal. So at the count of 3, I'm going to just give you a brief description. All right. Otherwise, this communication is meaningless because a lot of parents have no idea. I had no idea. My kids have graduated college, are out in the working world. So I wouldn't have known had I not run into this article on parents protesting what was going on in schools on a Christian news website. So at the count of 3, I'll begin. 1, and you can turn the sound down if you have young children. 2, 3. Okay. There are numerous organizations uniting together to they call it educate. It's really indoctrinate your children to highly explicit, XXX rated, that's right, sex education programs. Okay, and some of the programs are called CSE, Comprehensive Sex Education. They are being carried out by school districts, the NEA, the UNESCO, which is part of the United Nations, organizations called SICUS, I think that's SEICUS, and numerous other so-called humanitarian organizations, United Nations type organizations, in conjunction with the teachers' associations and school districts across the country. Now, they begin this new comprehensive sex education. This isn't theoretical. This is already operational. It could be very well happening right under your nose. You wouldn't know about it, though. So I read the article in the Christian news site, and I was shocked. But like I always do, I'm not going to take the word of some journalist concerning what the curriculum is. They spelled it out. I basically got the idea, but I'm not going to. A lot of people exaggerate. Okay, so I went to the actual Sika's site. I went to the Comprehensive Sex Education site. They had the links for this in a legitimate Christian article, and I was wary of what I was going to get into. So, beginning at 5 years old, they hyper encourage your young child to masturbate. I won't say anything more. Aggressively promote that, teach them how. Okay? I'll leave the rest, you can fill in the blanks. That's not the place of education, all right? But that's not the worst of it. By the time they're 9 years old, they are being aggressively introduced to every possible sexual practice there is, with the exception of just a few practices. They would be exceptions because they're against the law criminally. Okay, like you can't kill somebody, and I really don't want to be disgusting. But there's very little off the table. There's just a few things off the table. And so what they're doing in the classrooms, they have professional sex educators come by. I was horrified. I saw a picture. This is from the parental group that protested. I saw a picture of a professional sex educator. They send them to the different classrooms. And do not be offended. I'm simply reporting to you what I saw. And she was dressed, but she was very theatrically. This is going to be offensive to some of you, but then you're going to have to turn it down for adults too. Okay, it's going to be offensive. I can't tell you the truth without being offensive. But you shouldn't be worried about you being offended. God help our children. The offense, that's what we should be offended about. Okay, so this professional sex educator, and they send them to all these school districts. Female, I guess she's 35 or something. All right. She is showing and giving a graphic demonstration on the many different ways you can use different kinds of vibrators on your body. And she simulates everything. The only thing, though, is she's clothed. But the simulation is so graphic, you can fill in the blanks. I was horrified. I'm not going to get into it too much, hardly get into it at all. Standing up on the table, rolling around, you can fill in the blanks of what she did with the vibrator. It was horrific. Then pass the vibrator around the room to your children. Okay. Then you can take any area of sexuality. We're not just talking about heterosexuality versus LGBTQ sexuality. That's just part of it. But it's all graphic. It's all graphically explained through comic books, picture books, videos, X-rated videos, adult videos, and specially made videos produced by Planned Parenthood and other groups, where this very innocent-looking girl, and they deliberately chose an innocent-looking girl, the girl next door. And the question is from another girl, and they videotaped this. Planned Parenthood did this one, and the girl asked the question, something to the effect of, "My boyfriend wants to get involved in S&M, sadomasochism. What can we do, et cetera, et cetera." And so the innocent-looking girl gives her some pointers on how she can safely engage in S&M with specifics. Okay, that's pretty out there, don't you think? Now, then any kind of sexual encounter with any amount of people, no matter how deviant, there's nothing off the table, remember. So, but your child is sitting in the classroom. This is interactive, so they're encouraged to go to their computers, and they can go to the websites of Planned Parenthood and these other professional sex education curriculum programs. They can read the material, they can watch the DVDs online or on their cell phone, and then there are links to XXX adult sites that have produced hardcore pornographic demonstrations, okay, using porn stars, etc., under the guise of sex education 101 or whatever. So this begins at 9 years old. So at 9 years old, your child is going to be exposed to hours and hours of video, of hardcore XXX porn videos featuring just about any sex act under the sun. Now, if that's not bad enough, to me, the most insidious thing of all is that the psychological technique that is being used upon the children is that you are abnormal if you don't vigorously participate in everything on the menu, the sexual menu. You're abnormal. And that the truly normal person is one who samples in their life everything that's offered on the menu, or at least tries it many times to see what they like. So as these 9-year-olds are being bombarded with the most graphic videos you could possibly imagine, promoting all these activities, the overarching message is that you're abnormal if you don't get into all this stuff, and if you're truly normal if you do get into this stuff. So that is tremendous peer pressure. That is tremendous psychological pressure, because we all know young people, even young adults, even adults are susceptible to peer pressure. Everybody wants to be accepted by the group. So if they think the group is doing this sexual deviation or that sexual deviation, they're going to succumb to the sexual pressure because they don't want to be laughed at and humiliated. Self-esteem is so important to them. So these, under the guise of sex education, these groups have very evilly, in my opinion, psychologically manipulated the children beginning at 9 years old to get them to act out in all. They're selling them on this stuff. They're not just presenting it to them. They're selling it on them. And again, there's nothing left off the menu. Nothing except for a couple of things which you could be arrested for. And I'm not going to say anything more, except to say the problem has not gone away. They have temporarily concealed it, but all the videos, all the links are still there, and they're just going to come back, and they're going to do what they always do. They always use the same strategy. Planned Parenthood, UNESCO, CICUS, all these groups. The same strategy. First of all, the parents don't know what's going on. They sneak it on the kids during the school day. Second of all, let's say you're a parent and you know, they had a thing in California, you could opt out. That didn't work. You know why it didn't work? Because of the psychological nature of young people. Nobody wanted to be the child who raised their hand. Well, let's say there's 40 students in a classroom, and all the students' parents said, you can participate in this hardcore sex education program. You don't want to be the weirdo who raises your hand and saying, I'm opting out. You don't want to be embarrassed. You don't want to be shamed. You'll be laughed at and ridiculed and mocked. So this is an indoctrination that is designed to totally smash into a million pieces any memory of a Judeo-Christian biblical worldview regarding human married sexuality. It is to destroy it. Now, you need to know that. I didn't exaggerate one iota. If anything, I downplayed it because I wanted to respect your sensitivities. I certainly didn't amplify. I could have gone into more specifics, but I didn't. But this is what's going on. So the point is that when you read my book, and you've got to read it, okay? I didn't write it just to write a book. You know that. I've written 34. I didn't need to write another number 35. But the book includes this, but more importantly, it includes the reasoning why they do this. The hidden agenda you will never hear of why the hardcore sex education videos and curriculum and basically manipulate them into physically hands-on experimenting with it, despite the fact that a lot of the things that they're advocating can create physical harm, psychological harm, and a whole spectrum of physical diseases because it's unsanitary. Why do they do that? Well, when you read my book, The Greatest Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Mankind in the History of the World, and you read the chapters I have on the Frankfurt School Marxists who designed a cultural revolution, and the sexual revolution is part of the cultural revolution. And then when you understand how, I explained it very simply, the psychological dynamics of socialism, communism, and Marxism and the Frankfurt School, don't be afraid of those heady titles. I explain it really in a fast-moving, really easy-to-read style. But here's the bottom line. The communists, the socialists, the social engineers know that once in any society, once they fragment sexual morality, once they destroy traditional sexual morality in a society, such as what they're attempting to do through the school systems, what always happens is once you smash and destroy Christian morality, what always happens afterwards is there's a psychological demolition that occurs in the human soul of men and women. And once they break all of God's commandments in the sexual area, it leads, the communists understand this, it leads inevitably to a societal violence, a societal revolution, and a desire to create anarchy, revolution, violent revolution, and to overthrow violently the existing order through a communist revolution. You see, once you break down the moral taboos and the biblical restraints and guidelines on human sexuality, once you destroy that, you've destroyed the part of the human personality that operates with checks and balances and things like self-restraint. Once you've destroyed the principle, the God-given principle of self-restraint in the human personality, then killing somebody in a revolution or for the cause of socialism is nothing. You see how it works? So for the last 125 years, you will see a pattern. You will see that in all these societies that were undergoing socialist, communist, Marxist revolutions, you would always see, as these totalitarian governments were rising in power, they would take away all of the freedoms of all of the people. So you would no longer have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, freedom to bear arms, freedom from unreasonable search and seizure. You would lose every freedom, every freedom. The only freedom that these communist societies would give you unrestricted access to would be the freedom to participate and indulge in sexual immorality of every kind. So why is it that in every communist totalitarian society, they take away all of your freedoms, except in the area of sexuality, where they basically say you can do whatever you want? Is it because they're good and kind? No. First of all, they understand that by giving people unrestricted license to every form of sexual perversion, it occupies their minds and it blinds them from seeing what's really happening in their nation. Number two is they very deeply understand that once you break down the inner moral restraints regarding sexual morality, once you demolish those in the human personality, you then set up the individual on a mass level to be predisposed, to be violent, to do anything necessary, lie, cheat, steal, in order to implement a violent socialist, communist, Marxist revolution. You see how the two go hand in hand? So now think about all these schools. These schools have been promoting socialism and communism without calling it communism for 50 years. That's why millennials believe communism and Marxism is the ideal for America and socialism, and yet have no idea what these economic systems are. So generation after generation of young people in America have been indoctrinated into a socialist, communist mindset. They're predisposed for it. However, in order for the next phase to happen, you have to have like a revolution phase. And that is why it is necessary, just as they methodically planted the seeds of the benefits of socialism and Marxism into your kids' minds, so they are planting the seeds of highly graphic, triple X-rated adult videos and promotion of absolutely no restriction on any sexual activity, and told to go for it 100%, with one or two exceptions because it would be criminal and you'd be thrown in jail. And that's done on purpose because they know that through disintegrating the marital unit, by disintegrating the person's willingness to say no and exercise moral restraint, once you remove that from a child or a young adult, you remove any inhibitions a person might have to lie, to act violently, to do whatever it takes to implement a communist socialist revolution. So you see how these principles are very well thought out and deeply thought out. Now, unfortunately, pastors are not teaching people from the pulpit the truth. They're not teaching the youth groups the truth. They're not even aware of the truth. And so, because they are failing to function as proper biblical watchmen, God's people are being set up for the same thing that occurred in Nazi Germany and the same thing that occurred in Russia, because history repeats itself. If we can educate enough people fast enough, we don't have to enter this fatalistic death spiral. We can avoid it. And that's the purpose of Paul McGuire Ministries and Paradise Mountain Church, is to do that, because Jesus said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." That's why I encourage you, if you care about our nation, if you care about your children, you need to have knowledge and wisdom. You need to know what's going on and what to do about it. And you need to go to paulmcguire.us and order a copy of The Greatest Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Mankind in the History of the World, because it breaks all of this stuff down for you simply. And on top of that, your youth group, instead of, teaching trivial pursuits, or your Bible studies, instead of teaching biblical trivial pursuits, when your house is on fire, you know what your priorities are. Get the house to stop being on fire and move to safety. The time is long over for indulgent Bible teaching. You have to get your hands on truth that really is applicable to your life and matters. So I encourage you to get a bunch of books and use your influence to have them taught at youth groups, personal Bible studies, churches, etc., etc. And the book it's just out now, The Greatest Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Mankind in the History of the World. And it will teach you at a high speed, entertaining, fast-moving rate. This book is not a bore. It's easy to read. You need to get it, because if you don't know what's going on, how can you possibly stand up for what you believe in if you don't know the nature of the game that's being played on you? So visit paulmcguire.us. That's paulmcguire.us. McGuire's MCGUIRE. Okay, this was important, an important digression, because it's so immediate. Now, as we look at our nation now, we see some very disturbing things. Essentially, we're seeing, and this is not a partisan political statement, I would say the same thing if Obama was in office. We're looking at a president that just went through a complete fictional Russian collusion, which never existed, and it was proven that it never existed. That didn't even end the day when there's now a full-scale attempt to impeach the sitting president of the United States of America. Over what? Over nothing. Over nothing. There's no more substantive evidence of wrongdoing that warrants an impeachment of this president than there was any substantive evidence of wrongdoing in the Russian collusion. This is a completely fictional operation, but it's an operation being carried out right in front of your eyes by a merger and an unholy alliance between the deep state, certain political operatives, and this Orwellian media. And here's the takeaway from it, and this is what should bother you. In America, we're supposed to be voting for the office of President of the United States of America. And then the idea is that you respect who's in office even if your person didn't get elected. Okay, so you respect and you may have to endure it. But that's just the way it is. Because our system of government is based on we the people. So the people vote for a president, and that president wins, and then that president is legally and lawfully allowed to function as our president. You don't get together people who represent the minority of the population who didn't get to see their choice for president get elected. They don't have the right to undo a legal election simply because they don't like who's in office and they don't like what the person stands for. Okay? That's what they do in communist nations. So what's going on now is nothing more than what they call a soft coup. A hard coup is when it goes into a military phase, when you start to see armed troops around the White House or things of that nature. That would be called a hard coup. But right now we're in a soft coup, but it is a coup. Everything that's occurring now is not the way our political system is designed to run. It's an illegal and abusive usage of our political system. So here's the problem, though. If the American people, both on the left and the right, both Democrat and Republican, if they allow a legally elected, lawfully elected president of the United States to be removed from office via a coup, because they don't really have grounds to impeach him any more than they had any grounds for a Russian collusion, you've set a precedent. And the precedent is that if you don't like who's president, you don't like the outcome of an election, then you can have a coup and make up charges and throw the man or woman out you don't want. Well, then you'll have permanent instability and will eventually go to some kind of dictatorship because our society isn't designed to function like that. So let's say next time around, it's a Democrat or liberal who gets elected into office. And instead of the conservatives and Republicans respecting the office of the presidency and the liberal who's in office, they now decide they're going to play the same game. They're going to have a coup, and they're going to drum up charges that don't have any substantive evidence, and they're going to illegally remove this liberal Democrat from office, because that's exactly what's going to happen. Once you start this, it's permanent chaos. And so that may be the real agenda, is to destroy the American institution of electing a president. So this is a very serious thing. And so you're responsible as a citizen to speak out intelligently, rationally. You're supposed to be praying for the presidency. but you're supposed to be voicing your opinion in the appropriate manner, a law-abiding, peaceful way. If you don't voice your opinion, if you don't stand up to be counted, then you're going to empower an illegal coup where somebody is illegally removed from office. And this hasn't happened like this before in the history of the United States of America. That's how serious it is. Now, the other part is we have increasing numbers of people in our nation, and I talk about this in my book, The Greatest Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Mankind in the History of the World, that have embraced what's called a socialist worldview. But there's no such thing as socialism. Any communist leader will tell you socialism is simply the seduction phase. Socialism is the stepping stone to get you hooked into communism and Marxism. Communism and Marxism has failed in every single nation that it's ever been tried in. That is an economic fact. It's not something you can argue or dispute. And this lie of this mythological democratic socialism is non-existent. And I don't know what some of these politicians are talking about when they talk about Sweden being an example of a successful democratic socialist state. Sweden is on the verge of bankruptcy and economic chaos. So that's a complete lie. So you have to understand that in Marxist communist thought, which is really what socialism is, they, by their own definition, have given themselves permission to break all the rules. You have to understand, you're not dealing with two equally valid moral systems. Okay? Conservatism that's based on biblical Christianity operates on a moral system of right and wrong. You're supposed to do the right thing. But we're not competing with liberalism. We're competing with socialism, Marxism, communism. Socialism, Marxism, and communism doesn't believe in right or wrong. In their own words, they say that they're allowed to use by any means necessary in order to accomplish their agenda or revolution. That means, by their own definition, they're allowed to lie, cheat, steal, break the law by any means necessary. Any means means any means, no qualification. You're allowed to do whatever it takes, breaking the law, lying, cheating, whatever is illegal, to overthrow this existing government and bring in your Marxist communist revolution. That is the core belief set. That is the core ideology of socialism, Marxism, communism. So you have activists in our nation working in partnership with the deep state. Why is that? Well, when you read The Greatest Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Mankind in the History of the World, you'll see why the Marxists and communists work hand in glove with the deep state and with the media. There's a financial connection between the three entities, as well as an organizational connection between the three entities. So you're not dealing with an equal playing field. You're dealing with an adversary who has no moral hesitation whatsoever to use any means necessary to accomplish their goal. So it's irrelevant to them whether or not there was really a valid reason for a Russian collusion investigation. It's irrelevant to them whether or not there's really a valid reason to impeach the president based on whatever. That's irrelevant to them. And you need to get over it and quit thinking about it because it's irrelevant to them. They don't care. You know, you listen to the moderate conservative television network and it's like walking around in a circular pattern over and over again. And it becomes both obnoxious and ridiculous to hear the same rhetoric of impotent frustration. They don't care whether it's wrong or right. So to constantly argue from the position of making a moral appeal to a media or a moral appeal to the deep state or a moral appeal to these socialist, communist, Marxist activists, borders on insane. You cannot throw your hands up in the air, scratch your head, and act befuddled and continually and perpetually wonder why your opponent isn't playing by the rules. At a certain point, and that point should have happened 20 years ago at least, you have to come to the conclusion and to the historical fact that your opponent, by their own definition, does not require themselves to adhere to any moral values or any moral rules. They're playing a totally different game than you are. So it's both pathetic and ridiculous to continually whine about the fact, well, why are they allowed to do this and why are they allowed to do that? That is not the question. The question is, you have to understand who they are by understanding what their core beliefs are. If you don't understand what their core beliefs are, you're just going to walk around in a circle and accomplish nothing. That's why you need to get a copy of The Greatest Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Mankind in the History of the World. They say, I quote their leaders, I quote their strategies in the book. They say over and over again, by any means necessary. That means lying, cheating, stealing, breaking the law, whatever it takes, do it. That's their normal. Do you understand? That's why when Christian parents, well-meaning, scratch their heads and go to the school boards and the educational institutions and Planned Parenthood and UNESCO, and they continually make a moral appeal, kind of begging, please, let us have some biblical morality in the sex education programs. Again, you're reflecting your lack of understanding of their core belief systems. Why would you make a continual moral appeal to somebody who has no moral anchor and who has already given themselves permission to break every moral law under the sun when they've said, by any means necessary? They have openly said in their literature for over 100 years that they are allowed to conduct their communist, socialist, Marxist revolution through lying, cheating, breaking the law, murder, whatever it takes, do it. They don't have any restrictions. That's why they don't blush when they know full well what the outcome is going to be when they indoctrinate your children with every form of sexual perversion known to mankind and program into your children that that's the new normal. They're doing that for strategic psychological reasons, to shatter the Judeo-Christian moral base in your child so that your child is set up or programmed to exercise no self-restraint, and that way they will more easily succumb to brainwashing and to functioning as a communist, socialist revolutionary, which they're being programmed to be. That's why the anger level keeps rising in our society, because the anger level is rising in our society among certain targeted groups who it is their plan will function as the on-the-street revolutionaries. See, we're being set up for a Marxist revolution. In fact, we're already in the middle of a Marxist revolution. We're just in the early phases of it. So, now that you know this is happening, you have a responsibility. Your first responsibility to become as educated as you can as to what's happening and why, and then to be educated as to what you can strategically and effectively do to change the situation. The alternative to that is being a victim. The alternative is rolling over and just being conquered. That's the alternative. What do you think God wants you to do? I hear this phrase among Christians all the time. What would Jesus do? And it's usually, it's said somewhat innocently. But what would Jesus do in this situation? And you see, the only way you can answer that question is to have developed a biblical worldview. If you go into the Bible like most Christians in America go into the Bible and come up with some passage totally out of context, like Jesus would turn the other cheek. Not in the middle of a Marxist revolution, he wouldn't turn the other cheek. He wouldn't turn the other cheek. What are you talking about? You don't have any idea what the Bible says. You don't understand what your Christian forefathers had to do to give you the freedoms and rights that you have. You see, it's that kind of inane misinterpretation of the Bible that's paralyzing God's people. You have got to become educated. You've got to know what's going on, and then you have to choose to actively participate in spreading the truth as fast as possible to as many people as you can. It's in that way God can use America for its prophetic destiny. It's only through that way that we can win souls for Jesus. It's only in that way we can make disciples of all nations. So, it's on that note, I want to challenge you to think, to get involved, and join us. This is not just a radio program. The stuff I do on video is not just a video program. The books I write are just not books. This is all about producing materials to educate you and strengthen you. You know, I'm going to go into a side note really quickly. This is before a lot of your time period, but some of you will remember the group Pink Floyd. It was a huge British rock and roll group. Not quite as big as the Beatles, but up there in the same league. And Pink Floyd, the front man for Pink Floyd was a guy named Roger Waters, and I was watching an interview with Roger Waters today. Now, Roger Waters didn't become a Christian, but Roger Waters understands. He was using terms like our Orwellian media, the thought police. He was talking about brainwashing going on by the thought police and the Orwellian media. And I'm saying to myself, as I'm watching Roger Waters, the front man for Pink Floyd, heavy-duty rock and roller, he understands more of what's going on in terms of the culture wars and the big brother nature of our society than 99% of the Christian pastors I meet, and probably 90% of the Christians I meet. And he doesn't even claim to be a Christian. He's just using the mind that God has given him. And that's what we need to do. We need to get this message out. So, I'm asking you to join me. First way you can join me is to be an intercessory prayer partner, and do not grow weary in well-doing. If you've grown weary in well-doing, then you need to ask the Lord to send the power of His Holy Spirit to rekindle your inner strength. Thank you for being a faithful prayer warrior for me and my family in this ministry. Thank you for distributing the links so we can get our message out far and wide. And thank you for listening to the Lord and obeying the Lord so generously when God speaks to you and puts an amount for you to donate financially or to make a contribution financially to this ministry. Your donations, your contributions, your prayers, your willingness to spread the links, together we can accomplish far more than we can individually. And remember, God has a prophetic destiny for America. And I don't know about you, I'm not into the surrender business. I meet a lot of Christians that are in the surrender business. Somehow that just never really appealed to me. Never really appealed to me. Can you imagine what would happen if David had surrendered? Or any of the people in the Bible? Well, we wouldn't even have a faith to live out. So faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. God bless you. I'm Paul McGuire. Visit paulmcguire.us. That's paulmcguire.us.